Hi, thanks for tuning in again with us today. Joe DiMatteo of the Ask the Pharmacist, Len and Joe radio broadcast. Pharmacist, Board Certified in Clinical Nutrition, and Doctors of Naturopathy. I want to thank you for coming aboard. You know, Len and I have done numerous of these quick 10-minute teachings, and today I'm going to focus on another that is of a recent controversy, what I will term the multivitamin controversy, or the flawed multivitamin studies that are afloat right now. And I want to also remind you that for further information, you can come back to this website, lenandjoe.com, or go to the daily broadcasts that we do, XM Satellite, Sirius Satellite Radio, also on numerous local stations in cities around the country. But if you go to the website at lenandjoe.com, you can receive a listing of where and when those shows do air. Not only that, we have a continuous backlog of previous programmings that we keep on file that you can go back and listen to. Go back and have a family member listen to it. The October 18th show, Monday, October 18th, we did, I believe it was the 18th or the 17th, I'm not sure, Monday here in October. We just did a similar scenario to this. So let's get into it. It's probably going to be a two-parter, so multivitamin controversies number 1 and multivitamin controversies 2. Why? Why would I be talking about this? Well, recent literature comes out and says that, first of all, they've done a large-scale study, 39,000 individuals, and in that study they find that men and women, in particular women, that use multivitamins for a long period of time, they have a higher risk of death. And the incidence was, I believe, about 9%. And there are numerous areas, and again, I haven't gone over it with a fine-tooth comb, but these are some of the areas that I'm going to talk about that I believe are flaws in the study, number 1, that have been not enumerated, have really not been discussed. And in number 2, in part 2, I'll probably take another phase and say, and these are some of the components of specific nutrients and vitamins, why they're beneficial, why you need to know about them, and why they're good for you. Number 1, that if you look at this study that incorporates this multivitamin scenario, they use a ton of iron, or almost all of the multivitamins that were studied contain iron. We do not recommend the use of iron personally. In our multivitamins. In our daily essentials, we do not have iron. We've had actually folks call, send us emails, even call the radio broadcast and question, if you have such a quality multivitamin, why do you not have iron? And here's the reason, the rationale. Well, there's multiple reasons, but number 1, iron is an oxidizing agent, meaning it can generate damage or trauma, or we would call free radical damage in your body. Therefore, we do not recommend that you use iron in a supplement. Number 2, the only time you should use an iron supplementation is if you've been defined to have iron deficiency anemias. If you have anemic situations that warrant the balance of your iron levels and bringing up your iron levels so that you can carry oxygen and do business in your body, then it's warranted. I believe, thirdly, if you're going to use an iron supplementation, and if you have to use it because of an iron deficiency anemia, what you must do is use an organically bound source of iron that does not induce free radical damage or free radical trauma. Now, what I mean by free radical damage, think of something that induces rust to metal, rust to your car, something that you know if you do in your home that damages the paint on your walls, or something that if you put on a surface, a cleaning agent that you know that will abrade the surface. That, just think of that in its most fundamental terms as something that is an oxidizing or a damaging agent to your body, not an inanimate object. Well, what you have to do if you're going to use that formulation or that oxidizing agent, you must have plenty of antioxidants on board. Meaning that if I'm using an oxidizing agent such as iron, and especially if it's the wrong source, then I must make sure that I have adequate antioxidants, and not only adequate antioxidants, but the right forms to counterbalance the oxidizing action of iron. The right forms of C, which should be all L-ascorbate, pH neutral, buffered, not D-alpha tocopherol or alpha tocopherol, which is the singular aspect of vitamin E, or the synthetic version, as mentioned, D-L-tocopheryl acetates, it must be the tocopherol family, and it must be the entire complex mix of 8 isomers, 4 tocotrienols, 4 tocopherols. That's vitamin E, not a singular entity that you see in over-the-counter versions and brands. Adequate antioxidants, the right forms of preformed vitamin A. How about some of the antioxidants that, for example, that we use in our prep that have some quercetin in it, some naturally occurring antioxidants that are not really vitamins. They're not vitamins. They're antioxidants to neutralize. So when you think about free radical damage, oxidizing agents, think of something that causes rust to metal, and then you use Rust-Oleum to prevent the rusting of that metal. Well, that's how you see antioxidants in your body, whether they come through the diet. Now, this conversation today is specifically about supplementation, because right now the argument is it's the supplementation that is causing people to die prematurely, which is a preposterous, really, lacks insight, is almost conspiratorial in nature. And I'm not a conspiracist by any stretch. But I will tell you, I find it very interesting that right now, as we sit in 2011, there's a move afoot from the FDA to control vitamin supplementation, to control what we call NDIs, actually enforcing manufacturers of supplements, and each individual one would have to apply for their own new drug indication or new drug application, almost like a pharmaceutical does. I'm very uneasy and uncomfortable with the studies that are released when the FDA is about to present to Congress and attempting to have something passed that restricts your access to supplementation. And not only that, that brings more control of supplementation to the FDA. Let's move on. Number 2. They generate free radical damage. Oxidizing agents such as iron generate free radical damage. I already mentioned to you we must have adequate antioxidants on board, meaning that I must take them. They must be coming in either through supplementation or through diet. Most Americans do not. Number 3, I do not believe that it was clearly defined when did the folks that were assessed, and literally was done via a questionnaire, did they start taking supplementation after they had realized or recognized that they had some form of disease or some type of disease or disorder or some progressive situation? The questions were never asked, are you engaged and do you have a health problem? Do you have Parkinson's disease? Do you have hypertension? Do you have, or have you been diagnosed with any of these disorders? Many times you will find that once an individual is diagnosed with something, they begin to, in essence, attempt to, I will use the word grasp at straws, and will begin to attach themselves to some type of supplementation in order to help themselves. What we believe is that you need counsel if you're going to do that, on what type of supplementation to use and when to engage it and what forms and what formulations. That you shouldn't just go out and just take any old thing. If it's Parkinson's, there are specific things you want to think about, metals and heavy metal toxicities, etc. If it is cardiovascular disease, your antioxidant status, buffered vitamin C ascorbates, pomegranate extracts, quercetin extracts, omega-3 quality fatty acids. I mean, the list goes on in that regard. Your diet, how much saturated animal fats, how much of an anti-inflammatory / Mediterranean type diet do you adhere to? Well, folks, this is Multivitamin Controversy Part 1. I'm going to encourage you to go to the website at lenandjoe.com. Keep your eye on and keep up to date on many of these that we continue to do. And we will continue to do numerous weekly. And we want to encourage you to go learn, watch the little videos, pass them on informationally to friends and neighbors. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to go on to Part 2.